I am very rarely left speechless by a TV show. Sometimes by a movie, sometimes by a video game, but very rarely am I left speechless by a TV show. I would say three times I can think of that I've just stared blankly at a computer screen after I had to watch it online, but oh my gosh. this oh, I'm Mason the Brock Henderson. This is Sherlock Season 4, Episode 2, The Lying Detective. And wow. I've been talking about this recently. I tend to sometimes look at IMDb just to look at, the episode, what it's called, what number episode is it, and I'll glance at the rating if I happen to be watching it the day after, or in this case 3 days after. So I looked at it, and the first episode got an 8.0, which I kind of understood. There were some problems. I thought there were some moments where they should have done, maybe stretched out certain things and shortened other things. But 8.0 is fair. It's still good, but not great. And then I look at this one, and it gets a 9.6, and I'm like, 9.6, is it really that good? It is. I would dare say it's even worth possibly a 9.8 or higher. And obviously, zero point 0.2 doesn't seem like a whole lot, but holy crap. Let's talk about it. So first of all, we start off with Sherlock. Well, we start off first with John, and he's seeing a therapist after what happened with Mary, and all of this is going on. I thought this was going to be kind of a connecting episode. You had the first episode where we see Sherlock coming back into it, trying to find out about Moriarty's message, but ultimately it turns into they have to take another different type of case, but it ends up being still interesting, and Mary dies because of it, and John obviously is very upset by this. So I thought this episode was going to be the whole John getting back into it, him having to overcome that and try to make his way back from all the hurt. But ultimately they took that concept, they used it very well, but it all tied into the bigger arcing story, and it worked so well. So it was really well done. And I started off talking about it, and then I went back to talking about the episode as a whole. I need to stay focused. So John's seeing the therapist, and he's talking to her. He's trying to figure out what to do now, I guess. And all of a sudden the car comes driving up and knocks a trash can into the window, and it's just like, obviously Sherlock. Well, they go back in time apparently as we see this group of people meeting, and there's a guy who's sort of heading the meeting, and he's talking to all these people. You can tell he's a very powerful figure, and everybody who's involved is, seem like they're very powerful as well, except for one woman who he said is his daughter. And as he's talking, all of a sudden it's cutting. I'm just like, what's going on? And eventually you find out that we're actually seeing this from the woman's point of view. We're seeing it from Faith, his daughter's point of view. And so she's trying to remember everything. Honestly, at first I thought it was a little bit, all the jump cuts and stuff. At first I was just like, I don't know if this is that good. It's kind of distracting. It's a little bit hard to follow. But after this entire opening section with not just that meeting and seeing the daughter trying to remember it and seeing the fact that she's talking to Sherlock about it, not just that, but then everything after that, where we see Sherlock talking with the daughter all night. We see him evading Mycroft and everybody and spelling F off in pretty much Google Maps. But all of that, there are a bunch of jump cuts, just they're cutting to all of a sudden this Calvin Hewitt, I think. I can't remember his name. But they're cutting to him giving speeches, and all these jump cuts just back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. I'm like, what is going on? Well, at the end of it all, we see that Sherlock has been high the entire time. And all of a sudden, it makes sense. I'm just like, okay, yes, now I get it. That's the reason it was so jump cutting. First, we were reliving the memory of this girl who was drugged with memory-altering drugs. And so that's why it was so cutting back and forth, because she was trying to remember it. And then as far as the jump cuts with Sherlock when he's out in the town with this woman, it's because he was high, and so all of these jump cuts are probably his memory being altered. Like it just the drugs altering his memory. So I love how they managed to do that. I love how they did that in such a way where they didn't really care whether you understood it at first, but they made sure by the end of it you knew exactly what was going on without even explaining everything. I really like that. So this opens up the entire thing, and then next thing you know, you see you get back to the present, and you see the car knocking the trash can into the window of the house where John and this therapist are meeting, and all of a sudden Miss Hudson gets out of the car. I'm just like, Mrs. Hudson? What? And all of a sudden she's talking to John, and you can see that she's, telling him, like, trying to convince him to come back and help Sherlock. And of course John's just like, no, I don't want to, because he's still hurting after everything that happened. And so you see everything Mrs. Hudson has had to deal with, and you kind of feel sorry for her. And then eventually John's just like, okay, fine, I will. She's like, you'll do it, you promise? And he's just like, yes, I will. And she's like, good. And then walks around to the back of the car, opens up the trunk, and there's Sherlock, handcuffed in her trunk. And they go back and they show she was dropping tea that she had made for him because she was acting scared. And I didn't even realize at the time she was acting. Well, as she's dropping the tea, as Sherlock's going to pick it up as he's putting down the gun, she picks up the gun and then threatens him to give her his handcuffs and get into the trunk of her car. That was brilliant. Just how that all played out, the way that they handled Miss Hudson is amazing. And honestly, I didn't expect her to be, but she was probably my favorite part of this entire episode. Just not as far as the story goes, but out of all the characters, I think she was my favorite because it's just so funny to see her. You just expect her to be kind of this weak little old woman, and all of a sudden she can turn and she's got you in her sights and she's got you cornered before you even realize it. And even Sherlock, of course, we find out that this was all kind of to plan because next thing you know, we hear that this supposed serial killer that Sherlock has accused is calling John and is like, you have a driver waiting outside. And he's just like, well, probably not here. And then all of a sudden there's a driver waiting outside. And then we find out that apparently Sherlock just planned all of this. He knew 2 weeks in advance that John was going to switch therapists and come to this house. And I'm just like, how? Well, he gets into the car that the serial killer sent for him, and all of a sudden Mary shows up. And she starts talking to him. And, you could see there was a moment where he was talking to the therapist, and it cuts back, and he's back in his house, and he's like, all right, well, I'm leaving Rosie with the sitter. And all of a sudden you hear a woman's voice saying, are you going to tell the therapist about me? I'm like, who, the woman that he was seeing? And all of a sudden it shows it's Mary. And instantly you just know that it's going to be one of those, okay, so she is in his mind still, he's still hallucinating her and talking to her, but she's still a part of him. And I've seen this done so many times, but what makes it okay is the fact that they use it really, really effectively. And not just in humorous ways, not just in good, meaningful ways, but also in some very emotional scenes. The way they use this whole John hallucinating Mary is very meaningful to him. It's very emotional, and how it just furthers the plot and furthers these character interactions. It's really well done. So you see John figuring it out, but Mary is the visualization of him figuring it all out. How Sherlock was probably going to figure it out because he's pretty much a creature of habit. So he finally gets to meet this guy. I can't remember who he was. I know he's somebody important, and I know they explained it at one point, but I don't know enough about Britain's government to fully explain who this guy is supposed to be. I know he's connected with the Queen somehow, but I don't remember. I kind of got lost in the details at one point, but apparently he's very important in England's government, and so he's using Sherlock's accusation as like an advertising campaign to make himself even bigger and have even more money. And so he's talking to Sherlock, and the entire time I just had all these theories running around in my head. Like part of me knew the entire time that obviously he's a serial killer. I mean, we've seen that Sherlock is clear. Even though he's on drugs, even though he's dealing with all that, he's very clear-headed. He knows what he's doing. So I know that he's made the correct deduction. I know that he knows this guy's a serial killer. So I'm just like going through all of the ideas in my head, going through every single possible outcome. And one of the ones that came into my head, which ended up not being used, was it seemed like John was kind of being pushed to the side. You know, like one woman comes up and she's like, "I love your blogs," talking to Sherlock, and John just like, "Well, they're actually my blogs." And so I was wondering if maybe they were going to go the route of Sherlock has the serial killer's full attention, and so he doesn't actually suspect John to be the one that's going to be his undoing. They kind of went that route, but not entirely. You know, it was still Sherlock doing most of the work, but John did play a big part in the end. But yeah, I kind of figured the whole drug high was just part of the plan. I kind of figured him attacking the serial killer was part of the plan. But what I didn't know about was the whole daughter. You know, at first, whenever they showed her coming in through the elevator and showed her with the walking cane, but didn't show her face, I'm like, okay, so it's probably not the same girl. So either Sherlock really did hallucinate that girl, or the daughter was killed and replaced. Like, I was wondering which one it could possibly be. But, you know, as we're seeing, you know, Sherlock is slowly starting to realize that maybe he did hallucinate the girl, and you know, I kind of was wondering that as well whenever Mrs. Hudson was like, "What friend?" And you know, hearing Mycroft say he's just out there talking with himself and all of that, I kind of wondered if maybe he was hallucinating her. And we find out later he really was. But I like the fact that it was kind of a mystery through all of that. It was like, okay, so do we trust Sherlock's memories? Do we not trust Sherlock's memories? You know, did he actually make a mistake? Because it didn't seem like he could have, but yet at the same time, he's very upset by the fact that this girl was actually a hallucination. So I'm just like, okay, I don't know what to think anymore. And they did a very good job of showing that. You know, just showing Sherlock breaking down. You know, obviously the whole attacking the serial killer guy was part of the act, but realizing that the woman was a hallucination, you could see the look of kind of terror on his face. Sorry, that was the dog. But you could see like the look of terror on his face as he realized, holy crap, I might actually have lost it there for a second. Like, I didn't account for this. So I just like the fact that they managed to show that and that they did a good job of making us wonder what's real and what's not. You know, what in his mystery, or what in his mind, this whole mystery, what is going in clear and what is he kind of filling in the blanks for himself. So all of this is going on. At some point, you finally see Sherlock gets administered into his hospital, and I'm just like, okay, so he's probably going to kill him then in this hospital. And so that starts to happen, but at the same time, we see Mycroft is in Sherlock's home, and John is talking to him, and it's just like, you know, you see Mary is making the deductions for him, which just kind of goes to show you that John truly is really smart. And that's one thing that I don't think this show has done enough of, is show that side of John. Show him being as smart as he is. You know, he's not Sherlock smart, but he does make deductions too. He helps Sherlock make those deductions. And so we finally see in this one scene, Mary is like helping him, kind of. Like, it's almost like she was giving him the confidence to actually say what deductions he was making. So we see that Mycroft is apparently hiding something, and he mentions, you know, you're hiding another brother, and I'm just like, another brother? I don't. That's interesting. I don't remember hearing about that and watching Sherlock Holmes, or reading Sherlock Holmes books and stuff like that. I don't remember hearing about Sherlock Holmes' brother, and so I'm just like, what is this? And so, you know, that was just kind of pushed to the side, though. I'm just like, that's going to come back later, isn't it? That can't just go away. Well, sure enough, we see that they find this DVD that Mary had left, that we saw her talking to Sherlock, and I was like, wait, there's more to that? And that's kind of what I really like about this whole ending, is that it took some of the stuff from the last episode that didn't really make a whole lot of sense at the time, that wasn't really focused on a whole lot, and it just kind of seemed pushed to the side for a second. And it brought that back in and really made it a big deal in this episode as well. It really connected the two episodes together extremely well. And I didn't really expect that. Most of the time it's been you have the first episode, you have the middle episode, and then you have the last episode. And they don't really connect very well. They're just sort of, you know, here's your setup for the story, here's an interesting case to bide your time, and then here's the final case that just everything goes into that case. Well, all of this really connected very, very well, and I love how they managed to do that. So we see John is starting to realize something's up. Well, apparently at the end of her DVD, Mary was telling him that he had to put himself in harm's way and cause John to go after him, cause him to go save him, and that will be what saves John. And so ultimately, John arrives just in time to save Sherlock's life. I love the fact that it ended up being John's cane that he brought to Sherlock. I knew that cane had to mean something because it focused on it for a second. Like, he's gonna use it to beat up the guy, and all of a sudden they're talking about listening devices. I'm like, there's one in the cane, and sure enough, there is one. And it's just as the entire plan starts to fall into place, I'm just sitting here laughing because it is so well planned. How everything worked out, it was so brilliantly planned. So we have the what seemed like kind of the conclusion, and it's wrapping up pretty nicely. We have the guy who the serial killer is confessing to all of his crimes because apparently it feels really good. And I'm just like, okay, well that's convenient. But then we have a scene where we see John and Sherlock together, and John's kind of watching over him to make sure that he's not doing anything harmful to himself. They stay away from the drugs. And Mary's just like, you need to talk to him. You need to talk to him. And finally, it seems like he's about to leave. And then all of a sudden, we hear like the text message go off, and he's just like, Irene Adler, and John makes the same deduction and realizes it must be his birthday because that would be I guess his thought process is that's the only reason why Irene would be texting him right now. And so that's when you just have like this really emotional scene where they finally start to actually talk to each other. And he starts to tell him, it wasn't you putting yourself in harm's way that caused me to come save you. It was Mary telling me that caused me to come save you. She's the one who made me who I am. It was her wanting me to be the man that she wanted me to be. That's what caused me to come and save you today. And then you just see, God, the scene was so emotional. You see him finally tell his hallucination, Mary. You finally see him tell her, I cheated on you. It wasn't anything but text, but I wanted it to be more. And he finally releases all of that and just breaks down. And Sherlock just comes over and gives him a hug and just like, it's just like, it's okay. And John's like, no, it's not. He's like, no, but it is what it is. And I'm just like, this is really sad. This is really emotional. And just the way they handled it, like I said, using the hallucination Mary very effectively in a very emotional scene. I've never seen it used like that before. I've never seen it used so effectively before. I love the fact that they managed to tie all of that together, and it just really worked so well. So we see all of that said and done. We see all of this. It seems like once again everything is wrapped up, and then all of a sudden it fades back in, and John's talking to the therapist. I'm like, where is this going? Because it seemed like everything was done. So what's going to happen now? Well, he's talking to the therapist, telling her about everything going on with Sherlock, everything going on with Mycroft, and all of a sudden, like, she mentions something about Sherlock's brother. I'm like, how does she know about that? And all of a sudden, like, the pieces start falling into place. You can see these scenes. You see Sherlock finds the note that the daughter left for him, and he's like looking at it, and just you can tell something's up. You can tell something's really wrong with how he's just handling all of this. Well, the woman just keeps talking more and more, and all of a sudden, like, it hit me. I'm like, wait a minute. That's the woman that visited Sherlock. That's the woman that pretended to be the daughter. And all of a sudden, it falls into place. I'm just like, it all makes sense now. And the way that they show everything that happened, the fact that she says, I just planted the few seeds in his mind, that makes sense. She apparently showed just enough of herself to where Sherlock, the hallucination he had of her, was based off of her leaving the note, and then all of the deductions that he made were based off of that. Were based off of the note and then seeing her, and then he filled her into the gap of this serial killer's daughter. And so then all of a sudden, like, she keeps talking, and she takes out one of her contacts, and she pulls back her hair, and then there's John's little daisy that he had on the bus when he saw the woman that he had the affair with. And I'm just like, wait, that was her too? And all of a sudden, it just came crashing down. I'm like, It wasn't Sherlock's brother, it was Sherlock's sister. And sure enough, that's who it is. Just like, holy crap. So the entire time, and we have Sherlock holding up a piece of paper, black light, miss me written on it. This whole time, it was Sherlock's sister. Just like, brilliant. Brilliant, 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 brilliant writing, brilliant build up. And to be honest, the woman marries Tape, everything that kind of ended the last episode. Some of the issues I had that were just kind of like, oh, well, they kind of got pushed to the side, didn't really get focused. This episode, in my opinion, actually makes the first one even better. When you watch it and you start to realize some of the stuff from the last episode, you start to realize what that was in actuality, the realization of everything that's been going on behind the scenes. It all of a sudden just makes so much sense, and the way that it all ties together. In my opinion, some of the people that go on IMDb and rate the episodes should go back and re-review the first episode with this new information. I think the first episode would probably get a higher rating. I just love how they tied everything together and wrote this entire story, and I can't wait to see everything to do with the final episode, which, considering the name of the episode, I think is like the final equation or something like that. It makes it seem like it may be the final episode of Sherlock, and I remember there were some talks that after this season, Sherlock is done for good. I'm a bit concerned because I don't know. I hate the fact that this is becoming the final season possibly, because I want more of this. It's so well done. It's so well written. All of the cinematography is amazing. Like I said in the last review, it's almost movie-like how all the camera work is done. It's amazing. It is amazing. And of course we have a bit of a cliffhanger, which kind of gets ruined when you see the fact that John is in the final episode. So the fact that she has a gun and then pulls the trigger, he's not dead. But curious to see why he's not dead. Maybe she decided not to kill him, or maybe she was using blanks to scare him, or maybe he dodged out of the way. I don't know. I'm curious to see what's going to happen, but it's amazing. It's a brilliant, brilliant setup for the final episode. I hate the fact that they only have 3 episodes, but they utilize these 3 episodes so well that it doesn't even matter that it's so short. You're just like, it's really good. It is really, really good. So, I'm looking forward to the final episode. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What do you like and dislike about this episode? What are you looking forward to in the final episode? Do you have any theories? Stuff like that. Let me know. We can talk about and discuss all that good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe for future Sherlock reviews, and I'll see you at the next one. Peace out.